Hi guys, welcome to the channel. So apparently I had like a whole 24-minute footage cut out because I don't know how to transfer files apparently. I'm going to change outfits later on because the rest of the video is going to be a completely different day. It's also overcast right now, so it's super rainy and windy, so if my mic is picking up things around, I apologize in advance. Oh, listen, honey, if I told you about the way that I felt. Today I'm talking about Word of Honor. It's a show that everyone has been talking about. People won't shut up about this show, and for a good reason. Now I've seen it. I have this like post finishing a show depression, also known as PFSD, and I finished it with like within a week, which I don't recommend. You should definitely spread it out, but it was so good, and I was busy. Like I had work and stuff, and so I work from home, and so I was just like, okay, I'm so tired, but I have to watch 3 more episodes. And they're 40 minutes long each, so it didn't feel as exhausting. Well, one, because the story's so good and the characters were so good and well. 7 episode, which is like 7 minutes. Really, it's like 5 minutes because most of it is flashback. And because the 36th episode felt very drastic in the way that it ended, and I was like, wait, what happened? But then I went in the comments, and there were a lot of people like making conversation around like, oh, this is what happened in the book, and maybe this is what happened. And so I felt that wasn't like I was like, all right. And then I found out there's like a 5 minute thing because I don't want to spoil it for y'all, but it ends in a way that you were like, what? I appreciate like the dramatic entrances of some of the characters, specifically Lowen, when that type of like moments where I'm just like, what? But it feels so good and it feels so raw. I hope it keeps getting the hype that Untamed gets because it's so well done. Word of Honor is a Chinese bit about the synopsis because I like to start with the synopsis. The leader of an assassin organization, the Window of Heaven, quits his position in pursuit of freedom with drastic measures in his travels. He meets the leader of Ghost Valley, who wants nothing but revenge. The two meet after they become entangled in various things within the martial world and eventually become soulmates. Like conspiracy, there soulmate stuff, there is treasure hunting, there is forgiveness, there's a lot. It's a lot, and if you have seen the show Untamed, it's very similar to it. Like in terms of premise and stylistically how it looks, but everything else is quite different, I would say. The way that I'm structuring today's video is in things I don't like about the show, which is not a lot, and then things I really liked and enjoyed about the show. And then finally, some bonuses, things that I could not really fit in either bucket. If you've seen my Untamed analysis, you know how this goes. So the years, it's essentially if you do it, you can do it on yourself, or it could be applied to you. So you just essentially actual nails get into your body over the years, and eventually you start to lose your senses, you start to lose everything, and it's so creative and something that I have never seen in a show. So that was really creative. I like when shows like kind of step out of like the realm of like reality, even like, and then take a step after that even. They got really creative. So the trees had swords, like anything can happen, and like literally The other thing I really liked is that they got super creative with the disguising. I've never really seen in shows that I enjoyed, except like really Western shows like Mission Impossible and stuff, where someone disguises as someone else and there's no flaws to the mask, there's no questionability around it, and it's so beautiful. And like that is one of the crafts that someone can practice and can pass on to their children or to the different people in their sects. That's so cool that Ashu, for instance, was like a disguise master, or like, because I guess it makes things don't need to always be explained. I'm gonna put on my glasses because I just realized that I can't really see well. Cool. The other thing I really, really liked about the show is how somber and graceful atmospheres can be, and conversations and themes can be, and how that could be like illustrated through the environment itself. This is something I notice a lot in Asian shows, but really specifically in martial art premised shows, like Untamed, where the environment and like the natural elements around them lets them do the talking. Like they don't really have to say, "Oh, this is what I'm feeling. I'm feeling really somber at this moment," or like I'm feeling really like really stressed out at this moment. The amounts of things around them, because it's so grand and graceful, it feels like that is enough to tell the story. And I just like really appreciate it. I appreciate that they take cinematography and just like the elements like rain and just like a lot of water based things to do the talking of like, oh, this person is feeling extremely like lonely right now. There was a there was a there was a scene. I will try to put it up. I always like get struck by specific scenes. I talked about this in my untamed analysis too, my loose analysis, where someone else's emotion in specific moments feels extremely grand and heavy, and nothing is said except the people or like the characters are just kind of standing there and just soaking the moment, and you feel like you're almost like intruding. And so this show did that so well, where there's a moment with Ashu and Lawen, and they're standing, and Ashu tells him like, "I am not gonna live long." Like he just literally revealed that he's dying slowly with the nail of torment, which is still crazy. Lawen is like reacting, like he's like thinking that this person is going to be his soulmate, and he is just like really not happy about the news, but also extremely just like he didn't know how to react because this is so big, this is so grand that there was no other way of reacting with words, but like just like with his body language and the rain, and he just kind of stood outside, I think played the flute. I will try to put up the clip. Hopefully it doesn't get copyrighted. It's so easy to get copyrighted for these like types of videos. Another thing that I really liked about the show is the martial art elements feel so much more fleshed out. What I mean by that is there was so much explanation around like the origin of, maybe this is again consistent with the way that like the book explains it, but they do such a good job of like, if you have never, there was no like gaps left, essentially is what I'm trying to say with the martial arts. Like it was really simply explained, okay, this is like a sect that can do this, and this is sect that's known for this, and it's very like very simple and casual explanations. So I didn't spend a lot of time being like, wait, how did this group know this, or like how did this character know this. Of course, like the people like Lawen, because he's like the chief of Ghost Valley, he has some unexplained martial art skills that I'm like, how did he know this? But it makes sense with his character because he has been a Ghost Valley for a long time, and you're able to gather and like learn different things that other people outside of the Ghost Valley wouldn't know. So that felt really good. Ashu had, and everyone had some sort of like a signature with their martial arts, which is, this is again something I expect. I hate to compare it to Untamed, but It's in a good way. Untamed, I really liked Untamed, and it was probably one of the best shows I've ever watched. That is like has the premise of like martial arts and has such a complex like story. Um, every person who does their own martial arts has like some sort of a story that they have adapted from their ancestors, from the sects that they're in, and there's like a signature associated with their martial arts. A shoe has like the footwork that everyone can recognize them by. People can see and be like, oh yeah, that's like he's from the window of the assassin. That's what it is. The leader of the assassination organization, the Window of Heaven. Yeah, it just feels like really fleshed out, and then also extremely like explosive and energetic. As someone who was briefly in theater or like worked around theater, one of the things that we spent a lot of time doing was like blocking and essentially creating choreography for fight scenes, because they're like some of the hardest things to flesh out. I've seen a lot of Western shows where like there's a like action packed, and I've seen like choreography for action scenes like John Wick, which I think is like has one of the best like Western like choreography based action scenes. You can argue with me, but you know that's what I think. I watch like martial arts in China, like Chinese shows, and I'm just like, yeah, like this is not even close. With Untamed, I'm doing this on purpose. With Untamed specifically, it felt like so elegant. It felt like a slow dance. With this one, it felt extremely explosive. It was almost like multiple dances being performed. And I mean, at the end of the day, a choreography of fight scenes is essentially a choreography, like just like similar to dancing. Really, really appreciated how much they kind of took time with that. That just felt really, really strong to me. Other thing I really, really liked is that the themes felt so strong. The motifs of the show were so, so strong. Stuff like loneliness, unforgiveness, or forgiveness really, love, hatred, revenge are explicitly named, because sometimes they kind of like forget. For instance, like punitive measures and being like punishing someone for what they have caused, and like how revenge consumes you, and how romanticization of like someone who's considered a hero can actually be really damaging to who they are as a human being. And like and I think that's really revealed through the dialogue, which I really, really appreciate, because the dialogue is like such a thing that I don't really typically compliment in shows like this, where it feels like a lot of things are happening. But it just is extremely important to have a dialogue that's revealing. Every character had a point where even when they were being like humorous, it was revealing something about them as a character. It wasn't like something that was just slapped on to fill space. Like Lowen, for instance, is a very poetry based type of man. And so he speaks in like idioms and stuff. And I wish I understood Chinese idioms. Like there's moments like this, I'm just like, I wish I understood this. Yoku did a really good job of explaining, and I think they do this a lot with subtitlers. I appreciate subtitlers so much. They're doing such God's work. They put like, this is a Chinese idiom, this is what this means. But like, you could only get so far as someone who speaks like a second language. It's like, it's really hard for me to explain something to English if it's an idiom or like a saying that's like culturally relevant. And yeah, that's like, I felt like I was missing that, because everything that he speaks is like dense with poetry and like richness, like Lawen specifically. So I felt like I was missing that part, but it was so good and it was very consistent. So like because of that, the dialogue felt more like stronger to me than any other. I hate to say it, but like it almost felt a little bit stronger than Untamed, because with Untamed, I love the characters, I love everything about it. There's things I didn't like, obviously, but the dialogue did not leave an impression, just like with this one. What they're trying to say with every action, with every relationship, with like this like soul bonding, soulmate type of thing, they did such a good job. You can tell like the writer worked like really hard to just like make the dialogues mean something. And I mean, like even the stuff about like how there's no timeline around forgiveness, and Ashu kind of understands that firsthand, coming from the window of heaven where he has done some pretty bad stuff, and so he understands like Lawen, like he kind of get kept giving chances to Lawen, saying like, hey, whenever you're ready, and if that isn't like a gentle person who has learned cycles of like being punished and being given timeline for being forgiven by the people around him, I don't know what is. So that felt so strong, and I just appreciate that so much. My storage filled up, and I was trying to fix it, and yeah, it's not good. So I'll try to figure it out during editing. I think I was talking about dialogue. Like the dialogues, not only are they again like revealing something, but they're so purposeful, and they almost kind of like reveal the theme of the story. So, life without martial arts. Everything, is said with so much poetry and so much weight. The romanticization of heroism, how revenge consumes you, how hatred is actually a lot of work. So just I really appreciated that about it. Additionally, it also did not have that like I hate when they do this in shows where they dramatize a dialogue when something important is about to say. They say something like forgiveness is something you have to do in such a poetic way, but like in such a casual way. So everything in the show feels very everything the characters say, everything a character say in the show feels just important, even when it's not. You're like, oh, that has double meaning. The next thing I really liked about the show is the themes. The big themes were so clear, were so pronounced. They didn't really shy from naming the themes. A lot of the time, shows are like, find it out, like, figure it out yourself. It's all interpretation. And I think there's a lot of interpretation, of course, with a lot of stories. Ashui was like, forgiveness does not have a timeline. Just because you fuck up today, like it doesn't mean I can't forgive you tomorrow. Like I feel like that's such an important theme. Also like he feels really wronged. Like Asher feels very wronged by the things that have happened to him, but he also feels like a terrible guy, which is why he is much more forgiving and much more like giving of a second chance and a third chance and a fourth chance to someone like Lawen. So because it just is something that he has seen people not giving him a chance, so he was almost like extending that to him. So like that theme of like punitive measures and accountability can exist with still like loving and caring for someone. The next thing I really, really appreciated about the show is the character development of everyone, really, is so well done. Growth is seen in such an amazing and a plausible and a believable way. I didn't feel for one moment that, okay, this character going through this, that doesn't make sense. Probably the one person I would say that I was like, I don't know, it was like Scorpion, but I think that was done on purpose. But everyone else, their characterization was so believable. When, Lawen and Ashue were kind of going through, like, they hated each other at the beginning. Well, like, Ashue is like, this guy's so annoying. But Lawen was like following him. And it was so consistent with his character that it takes him a while, like Ashrei, like it takes him a while to build a trust to someone, whereas Lawen already knew this I'm gonna follow this guy and I'm gonna make him like me, and like I love that so much. I love that so much, and I appreciate it. That was my email alert. I should probably turn it off. I appreciated that so much. Even with characters that we didn't suspect were the bad guys. Anyone who has dimples in like these shows is automatically the bad guy. From now on, I just know. I just know. If you smile too much, if you're nice, there's something you're hiding behind that stupid closet of yours. It just like I did not see that coming, but I also was like, yeah, this is very plausible. This is very believable. Lawen growing up through his like journey and becoming like basically like a master, right? Like I think he becomes like a master throughout the show, because before he was feeling like very lost. Like he doesn't have an origin that he felt very strongly. He strongly identified with. Ashway is like so grounded, and so he kind of was almost trying to mirror who he was in order for him to like him. But then he realized like that's not something that probably would work for him. So he kind of was like he did not lose his essence even when he became a better person. Not that he wasn't a better person before, because I feel like good and bad is like such a complex things, and this show really shows that. It really illustrates that like good and bad are not things that are just given. It's something that you prove over time, and sometimes you fuck up and you fail, and then you get up and then try again tomorrow. And so that was really good. Oh, I'm so sorry, guys. There were moments where I was like, oh, I'm gonna hate this character, and they ended up being like really, really interesting. Fiend Ghost, she, like the girl, basically, I don't know what her name was. I don't remember. I will find out when I'm editing and put it up. But she was so interesting. She was so, like, at first I was like, oh, this is gonna be such an annoying character, because usually they use, in a lot of shows like this, they use women as like plot devices and not necessarily give them the complexity that they deserve. And I feel like they did not do that. Like they kind of just almost like cheated us. Like at the beginning, they were like, "Yeah, this character is gonna be annoying," and then she ended up being such an interesting character. The thing that I really liked about is the humor. This show is so funny, guys. And what I mean by funny is like Untamed was funny. Like Wawixan was so funny. He was like such an easygoing character. Like he did not take anything seriously that did not need to be taken seriously. With this one, Lawen was so like he knew the way that he came off to the other characters. He's so over the top. He's so over the top, and he knows he's over the top with his fan and everything. Even like the way he does like entrance, he's so dramatic. He's so like fun loving, and Ashway is like valid. And then we realized later Ashway is actually like someone who can be funny, who can be sarcastic. For him, it took him a really long time to show that vulnerable side of him, because humor and fun is like more of like a vulnerable thing. And I think it's very much tracks with like Lanja from Untamed. I hate to compare it, but I have to, because there's just so many comparison points that I was just like, oh my god, they're like mirroring. They're very different characters. It's just like there's a lot of mirroring. Such a funny show. There are moments where it shouldn't even be funny that I was like, I don't know if they meant this to be funny, but it is funny. Dynamic between the Grandmaster and Lawen, so good. Like he's calling him monster. He's saying like, oh my gosh, you're so annoying. Can you like get the fuck out? Like he's like done with him, but it's very like, they're going back and forth. You can tell like they don't inherently hate each other. They're almost trying to find a different way to interact and like talk about things that are like pretty frivolous most of the time. I mean, they were talking about important things like saving Ashway and stuff like that, but generally like they're just trying to have fun. I really like Jingling's and Lawen's dynamic too, and like he became like at the beginning he was like this kid who was like, I don't want to talk to anyone, like my parents died, guys, like leave me alone. He was very emo. He was very like, as he should, literally he lost people. He was going through grief, but then you could tell like him coming out of he's getting into like his comfort zone of being with people that he likes. Like Ashway and Lawen are like his parents essentially, and he's like so funny. Like the part where he's trying to like kill the chicken. Like I know this is so out of context if you haven't seen it, but it's so funny. Like, yeah, you're gonna need to catch the chicken if you're gonna be like a martial arts like disciple. And like he's like, oh my god. And it's so funny because he's like doing these like amazing things, and yeah, he can't like even conquer a chicken. So good. Love it. We love the humor. So there's a lot of stuff that I like, but if I went over everything that I like, this video will be 400 hours long. What I didn't like, I'm gonna go through these very quickly. There were moments, especially at the beginning of the show, where it felt like the costumes and the makeups felt cheap. And I think that has to do with production value, and it also had to do with just like budget and money in general, right? So I feel like that kind of took me out of moment. There were parts like the beggars, their outfits, and I don't know. I wish they like they would have executed that a little bit more. It took me out of the moment where I was just like, the wigs are so good that like most of the time I could not really tell. Even if it's like a cheap wig, the wig person did a really good job. So props to them for that. But yeah, makeup and costume can sometimes be like, I don't know, something about like, sorry again, Untamed, the costumes felt expensive. And I'm sure like it probably wasn't that much more expensive. If it looked very like chic, and there was so much distinction between like the different sects and the way that like the costumes kind of expressed which sects they were coming from. Like Cloud Recess had like their own, I'm talking about Untamed, they had like the light blue white very like golden like thing that they were wearing. But with this one it kind of felt like, I mean, everyone was like pretty consistent. It was pretty consistent, but there wasn't like so much story around the costumes and stuff, which is fine. That's not the most important part for the show, and that's okay. It just, I wish there could have been. I think it was weird coming from Untamed to this. I was like, oh, I wish they would have told me what this means. I wish they would have told me what the sword means. They talked a little bit about that, but it wasn't as important or as strong as it was in Untamed. The CGI, I think they used a lot of CGI in the show. And it can sometimes feel a bit unrealistic, and I think that's okay. That's what CGI is. But I wish there was like sometimes like the green screen or something, like the background, sometimes it felt really out of place. It felt kind of almost distraction, like there's some distraction to it, and I was like, wait, is that like a green screen or is that like an actual background? I don't know, couldn't tell, but that was weird. And then I think that has a lot to do with, honestly, with budgets. I am pretty sure Untamed had a much larger budget, unless you tell me otherwise. In that case, there's no other excuses. Maybe it's just the team that worked on Untamed versus, I don't know. It wasn't like important to the story, but yeah, it was kind of distracting at times. These are the things that I hated the most about this show, and I don't know if it was important to the show. Let me know if you've read the books and if it's this consistent. The unnecessary ableism, the kid from whatever cabinet, he was like a kid. Well, he's not a kid. He's like a man now, but like he like he almost had like Benjamin Button like type of disease where he basically despises everyone around him and causes chaos and is just like an evil person because he is disabled. I don't know. I feel like that's like simplifying disabilities and weaponizing also the conversation around disability. But I was like, at first I was like, okay, maybe this is like, an origin story from books or something. But I don't think there's really an excuse in 2021 when you make a show or like disability. Like you can take that out. Like I feel like there's something called poetic license where you could either not portray it at all or you can change it with something else. There's so many things. You got creative. You had like trees with swords. I think you can get rid of like the unnecessary, very blatant amount of this like ableism. Actually, I could not get one of the episodes where the guy with like supposedly with a disability was like, I'd rather die than like live with a disability, and like he throws himself into like the cliff and then he just like gets eaten by the creation. Like it's just like a weird weaponization of like people with a disability, and I don't know, that's not a great narrative to me. I don't know, I didn't like it. Yeah, that's my take on that. I was gonna say like misogyny, but I don't know. They did like the whole like respectability thing where they're just like there's characters like Lan Hung, I think her name is. I will put her name up again. The fiend ghost who was with the guy from Gentle Sword. She was like a badass woman who was doing shit, and she was like kicking ass, doing everything. She was so independent. But I don't know, like they're being so creative in all these different ways, but there's moments where I'm just like, it just takes me out of the moment. I'm like, I don't know, does this, like it's not really, it doesn't do anything to the story, so like what's the point of having this? Like you have strong people like La Wen's mom, who was like a healer, essentially a doctor, and then you have people like the Lovelace ghost was trying to like, I'm pretty sure like assault like the women, the prostitute that got bought, and then yeah, and then you have people like Aunt Lu, and yeah, it feels very inconsistent to me. I understand there's different types of women, and we're trying to represent all kinds of women, but it feels like kind of weird if it doesn't do anything to the story. So what's the point of portraying women, those type of women specifically, in that type of light? I don't know. I feel like it should not be like really strong, badass martial arts practicing woman or a whore. That feels weird. That feels no. But that's those are the big four, I would say. And I think now I'm gonna jump into bonuses or things that I just thought about that I thought could not fit in things I liked or things I didn't like. Let me just say, how did they get through pushing the boundaries around censorship in China? Because I know like this is, if anyone tells me this is a bromance, it's on site. We're fighting. It is not a bromance, okay? It is so clear that they are trying to tell a specific story about soulmates. Even the language they use when he was brushing his hair, when Lawen was brushing Ashu's hair, when they are being extremely explicit in poetry, like with poetry, like how much love they have for each other. They try to die for each other multiple times. No, 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 no. This is not a romance. So I don't know how they push the censorship, because with Untamed, I think they were like testing the waters almost. They were like, yeah, we're gonna make it as subliminal as possible. With this one, they're like, no, it's pretty explicit. And props to you guys. Like, that is so badass. It's interesting because this show is on the BL schedule website that I don't know who does it, but you are doing God's work. And they do like, September, this is what's coming up. And then they do month by month of the shows that are coming up. And this show is on there. So we all know it's not a bromance, but because of the censorship in China, if you don't know, China has pretty strict regulations and censorship around portraying queer couples. So in media. So because of that, they have to be very like jumping fences and doing all types of things, doing somersaults and all of that to show queer couples in different ways, and use words like soulmates and people that are destined to be together. And it's interesting. But I'm really happy they like were much more explicit, and I hope we keep pushing this censorship, this stupid censorship. How do you feel about the censorship? Did you feel like it was much more explicit, or did you feel like it was still subliminal? They could have done more. Like, what are your things? I want to hear. One of my favorite moments in the whole show, there's so many favorite moments. I think there's so many dramatic entrances by Lawen. There's so many dramatic entrances by Scorpion. There's so many dramatic entrances by Ashu. But one of my favorite moments is when Wei Ying saved Ashu. This has happened so many times, but the moment when Ashu has been taken by Prince Jin, and Prince Jin, he kind of gets, he kind of vegetates. Ashu, I will try to put the clip if I can, because this may not make sense. Lawen basically comes and kills everyone, and then he's like, okay, we're going home now. And it was very casual, but it was so beautiful. Another moment that I really liked is when the ghosts were like, Scorpion brought them to the stage, and they're like, do you know this man? Is this the chief of Ghost Valley? And the ghosts were like,
to say it, I hope I don't sound ridiculous. I don't know who this man is. I mean, he could be walking down the street. I wouldn't know a thing.
It's like he just took off his eyeliner, guys. But yeah, that's Word of Honor, guys. What did y'all think? Did you like it? I really, really liked it. I really, really liked it. And thanks to those of you that have flooded my comment sections from like literally last year, almost last year, maybe 6 months ago, saying like, you gotta watch Word of Honor, Word of Honor. There were a couple of people that DM'd me and they were like, you gotta watch Word of Honor. I'm so glad I did. Yeah, if you have any other recommendations, let me know. Thank you again for coming back. Yeah, we do all types of stuff here. We talk about shows that I like, shows that are popular. Just recently did Young Royals. So that if that was a show that you watched, make sure to give it all the
Listen,
love.
honey, if I told you about the way that I felt.